Okay. Hello and
All
welcome
right.
once again to yet another episode of the Small Bear Show. And we had Pickles, Aaliyah Celeste Williams, with us. We're having some technical difficulties. Hopefully, she'll come back. We have as our guest the legendary Are You Serious? Ken Goffman, who's the founder of Mondo 2000 magazine. He's a cyber culture progenitor, somebody who was basically part of a coalition that produced the digital landscape that we inhabit now and was an early advocate for things like AI, for virtual reality, for I believe they're called nootropics, smart drugs,
Mm.
and a huge influence on many, many, many people. Um, just as he was inspired by, figures like Allen Ginsberg and William S. Burroughs, and and wound up actually working with them, among other
Yeah, not
people.
Ginsburg.
Not Ginsberg. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
Ginsberg. I was actually in an anthology with Ginsberg, and which is
Mm.
amazing to me,
What a
because
great honor.
it
Yeah.
was a huge honor. And it wasn't while he was alive. It was in 20, said 2013, I believe. It was the or 2014. It was the Cut Up anthology,
Mm.
and people like Mark Olmsted were in that one. It was done by Joe Ambrose and A.D. Hitchen, who A.D. Hitchen wrote the foreword to my chapbook Akashic Shotgun, which was kind of, again, that's a sort of like a culture jamming of like Dorothy Parker's Sunset Gun and something and Robert Anton Wilson's Cosmic Trigger, right?
Mm.
And so, like, I think one of the things that I'm really grateful to you is kind of being somebody who's out there inspiring, being actually not just passively ingesting culture as so many, and you talk about like the sort of the culture of passivity,
Mm.
right? Whereas I always was very, very strongly inspired by people like Guy Debord and the Situationist movement in France in the 60s, which inspired obviously people like A.B. Hoffman and the Merry Pranksters and Ken Kesey and then sort of the kind of perfect storm where the Beat Generation and the hippies kind of joined forces and in the form of transitional figures like Neil Cassidy, right, driving the bus further, and then you had Stuart Brand with the Whole Earth Catalog and all these people. And they, because my dad, Stephen M. Johnson, was a early adopter of a lot of these things. Because he was on board with the Whole Earth Review, Coevolution Quarterly, Journal for the Preservation of All Beings, whatever they called it. From it was on on board from the beginning, and his work appeared regularly with people like R. Crumb and Bruce Sterling and you and Larry, and I think a lot of. So I grew up just in this environment where which my tastes were very, very much inspired by my dad bringing, home like the Zap comics, right? And the Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers, and reading the 40-Year-Old Hippie, and also like some of the like the horror comics. Like I really got into like people like Richard Corbin and heavy metal and magazine, and then Philip K. Dick and the whole thing. So it's really exciting to be actually working with you because like again talking about passivity And we were just discussing right before I hit record about how in some respects, because of maybe the political naivete of certain fans of the Orange Terror, that people who are politically naive may see Trump as a kind of a culture jammer in his own right. And
Sure.
could you expand on that?
I mean, you actually had the so-called alt-right identifying as a counterculture and having their puckish figure, Pepe the Frog,
Yeah,
et cetera, using a lot of the tropes that Mondo 2000, Robert Anton Wilson, among others, put out into the world, like Operation Mindfuck and uh, can't think of the word right now. If words might not pop into my head immediately. I don't know what happened to your brain, but my brain is such that sometimes the words come from the brain to the mouth, and sometimes they're back there uh, in the brain waiting to be discovered. But anyway, um, yeah, I think uh, a couple of months ago, I posted the phrase in a Facebook discussion, "We are all in-laws in the eyes of America," uh,
true that.
which was about the necessity as progressives to defend the neoliberal establishment against the white nationalist identity fascists. And neoliberal establishment was in the person of the time of the presidential candidate Kamala Harris.
Yeah,
So there are complicated aesthetics and political uh, uh, confusions associated with the need for rebellion, for counterculture, for revolution on the one hand, and the need to defend democracy as deformed as it is today, on the other hand, from a fascist rebellion, and the need to understand that some of the word for it, the hoi polloi, the some of the uh, down and out looking white, hairy, badly dressed males, the QAnon shaman, all these kind of weird fuckers are identifying in some ways with counterculture and rebellion in their own way. I mean, invading the Congress and you know, uh, pissing on the desk of the leader of the Congress, like these guys do, is in some ways was like a yippee dream, right? I mean,
right.
we wanted to do something like that,
Yeah,
and that aspect of the wild revolution of the early 70s is kind of lost in time now. So, I mean, where are we now? We're in this really complicated, messy situation where, on the one hand, we kind of have to be the adults in the room, and uh, you know, uh, and on the other hand, uh, we are lacking in giving uh, kids, particularly possibly white male kids out there in America, a counterculture that they can relate to and join. So they join the wrong counterculture. They
yeah,
they join the right wing crazy counterculture because the rebellion, partly, I mean not entirely, but partly because the rebellious energy is not finding an identity with the freaks. Um, So I'm not sure. I mean, one of the projects I'm working on now, I call Steal This Singularity, uh,
I love it.
s- subhead Prometheus rioting.
Nice.
So playing with the Robert Anton Wilson vibe
Of
via
course. Yeah. I love those
via
books.
the Abby Hoffman vibe.
Yeah.
Now I put out the Steal This Singularity meme a number of years ago, and it didn't really go anywhere because it's old. I mean, it's really old. The steal this, fill in the blank thing
Yeah.
is not really very current.
Yeah.
The Robert Anton Wilson, with his Discordianism, with the word I was trying to find earlier,
Yeah.
his Operation Mindfuck, his playing with conspiracy theory, the Illuminati, and so forth, um, really has a hook in internet culture today.
Yeah.
Uh, with Bob Wilson, I wouldn't have predicted this back in the 70s, but Bob Wilson is kind of the counterculture figure that has made it into the 21st century, along with Philip K. Dick and to an extent William Burroughs.
For sure.
Uh, Leary is vaguely known. Abby Hoffman is gone, disappeared pretty much. Um, so that's a vibe that carries forward today. So I'm going to see what I can do with it. We're trying to put together some people to organize a game
Oh, nice.
because I mean, if I try to organize a movement, I'm not very well protected, uh, right? But we organize as culture. We organize games and
Yeah.
uh, music and books and things like that, and we hope to be somewhat well protected by doing that. And I'm not sure if I hope someone actually brings it out into the world as a weapon, but uh, uh, the safest thing is to organize it as a game,
Yeah. There,
as
there
a
was,
narrative, a mix of game and narrative.
yeah, there was a couple of things that came to mind. First of all, one of your more famous, quotes was that, adulthood is a fascist concept. And I remember being heartened by that
Mm,
when you said that. And also the fact that, you know, that in many ways the kind of the whole cyberculture, is it a movement? I don't know. I mean, it's long past its kind of its sell by date because
mm.
we're embedded in it.
Yeah.
And so I keep wondering, and I spend a lot of time, talking with people like Greg Tomani. We were on the show together like a few weeks ago about how we can use the current moment to kind of um it's almost like we have to rethink culture jamming because something like the Occupy movement is I don't think that it has any legs. I think when we had certainly had massive protests, but that's just old-fashioned showing up, and saying like fuck you, you're not taking my Medicare, you're not taking my
Hmm.
Social Security, you're not like do you think that there's a chance that we could overthrow him?
It's an interesting question. I mean, I was thinking about this today that hands off is really a pro-establishment uh, idea,
Interesting.
uh, which is okay. It has to be right now.
Exactly.
Uh, to preserve what there is of democracy and of a
Right.
social safety network and
Right.
all those things. But I mean, hands off doesn't move very far beyond uh, trying to stop uh, Trump, Musk, and all those sorts from dismantling the state as we know it. I was also thinking recently about how Musk and Trump are going about certain things and how people are responding to that. There could be some valuable lessons there for any potential uh, left wing or progressive administration.
Hmm.
So, in other words, if you're actually going to go after corruption and bad spending and so forth, where do you start? You know, okay, you start with the Pentagon um, rather than social programs. But even then, when you start with the Pentagon, do you start by firing a bunch of people? Do you start by firing people who know what's going on?
Right.
Do you dismantle something that might put people here in danger? So we end up, no matter what, in this very delicate place.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, Even if you're trying to be revolutionary, there is a degree to which you would have to be gradualist about some of the things that need to be done. I mean, the same thing goes for the institutions that some have called the deep state.
Hmm.
Some will call uh, I'm losing the word right now, but the deep
Hmm.
state will stand in for it
Sure.
for the moment. Uh, how do we dismantle the uh, bad actors that we know from
Sure.
history associated with the Central Intelligence Agency, the National Security Agency,
Right.
the people who were spying on everybody as revealed by the hacker who moved to Russia.
Snowden.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, right, Snowden. Uh, I mean, the same guy who was denying spying on everybody in America is also a hero on MSNBC when he is critiquing the Trump extremists and how they're uh, uh, infecting or endangering our security
Right.
by what they're doing with the national security state. That's the word I was trying to find
Sure.
before. So, and they're not necessarily wrong in going to him to have him critique what those people are doing.
Right.
I mean, I mean, the complexity of it
It is really
is
mind-boggling.
overwhelming. And there was a third aspect to what I was thinking about in terms of what they're trying to take apart, what the lessons are from Trump, Musk, and what they're trying to uh, take apart. Oh, yeah. I mean, the final uh, element of that is how do you move away from the neoliberal uh, globalism,
Right.
right? So that
Well, how would you define globalism is already freighted and it's been kind of like weaponized, to stand in for basically like, like Jewish people,
right, right,
like the whole anti-Semitic trope of, the Illuminati, for example.
right. So if you remember in 1999, the anti-globalism movement was a
Right.
left-wing movement that was joined by Pat Buchanan had his own group there
Exactly.
to join with them because they were against globalism as
Exactly.
well from their own right wing. perspective, but
What
from a
what
left wing perspective, I mean, still, yeah,
what is
Bernie Sanders is still a critic of the World Trade Organization and the
oh
trade
yeah,
agreements.
right,
So when Trump and Musk, maybe not Musk actually in this case, but Trump
right,
and some Bannon and some of the white nationalists are trying to
yeah,
deconstruct elements of the global trade uh, uh, comfort,
yeah,
the comfort zone of that. And they say there might be some pain for a little while. A progressive revolutionary government might end up having to say the same thing if they're trying to move us away from the uh, free trade
yes,
neoliberal regime
for
and
sure,
move us into something else. So that's the third point of
right,
complexity that progressive a progressive movement, or particularly an administration, if it were to gain power within the state, would have to try to cope with. And we've seen disasters
right.
like, uh, you know, Nicaragua under what's his name, Ortega,
Ortega, yeah,
uh, Venezuela, which some tankies still try to defend,
yeah,
but which is a horrible populist authoritarian mess. Um, I mean, we see you could even say Stalin.
right.
uh, so yeah, so
I
these are complicated ideas. I'm happy that I'm getting these out with you because I hope to transcribe this conversation if you're okay with it.
I mean, I will definitely, I will send you the transcript. I'm
Oh, good.
recording a
Yeah,
transcript. So, and
excellent.
I'll
What AI records the transcripts?
it's just I have an AI companion, but I also have a transcript.
Yeah,
Just is part of it's a feature on the Zoom, so I could just
yeah,
like I'm saving the transcript in progress. Um,
yeah.
so one thing I wanted to talk about is my perplexity at I'm not going to talk about the white supremacists who tried to target the small bear show and me and Ellen Mabey, although that was a really crazy, like surreal situation.
Hmm.
We had some white supremacists who were very close to the president, um, who 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 came up with this idea of having this. They claimed that they were doing this documentary about me, and that it actually they'd first targeted Ellen Mabey last year, and they kept insisting that Ellen Mabey come and do a reading at Beyond Baroque that they would sponsor somehow, right?
Beyond
And
Baroque?
Beyond Baroque, yeah,
Okay. Uh-huh.
and I'll get into it at a later time because I really wanted to talk about, but this is very, very much related. Now, Ellen Mabey um, is like I think you were you on the show with her?
I
Um,
might have been. I don't. We've had a lot of shows.
we've had a lot of shows, right? Well,
Yeah.
Ellen
Mhm.
Mabey, among other things, she has, the same. She had the same job at Beyond Baroque that was held by Maxine Zarvenka, who also edited her book The Cowardice of Amnesia, which was published by Henry Rollins
Mhm.
and in 1998. And so um, it's one of the more bizarre, I think, things that have happened over the past. I think I don't know when Maxine started to make QAnon adjacent statements in the press.
Uh, uh,
But but it's weird because, you know, it seems almost symptomatic of what we're talking about, that
Hmm.
you have a band, X, which is profoundly associated with, counterculture, with William S. Burroughs. I mean, their lyrics are much like Bauhaus. They're very much cut ups,
Yeah,
like
they're
if you think
great.
of like Johnny Hit and Run Pauline
Yeah.
is obviously, and I remember when that album, when Ex Los Angeles came out in, what was it, 1977 or so, and reading the review in Rolling Stone when I was just a little kid, and thinking I would, and it discussed how the sort of like Burroughsian cut and paste violence of the lyrics, Johnny Hit and Run Pauline.
Yeah.
But their songs very much influenced by the folk, by folk song, and even the harmonies, and songs like the Have Nots, and which could be a Woody Guthrie song, right?
Hmm.
Country at War from the Hey Zeus album, and which had Tony Gilkinson on guitar, not Billy Zoom. But more recently, um, Exene is kind of MAGA, and just the same way that I discovered to my horror when I was like, after I was so like s so stoked to be backstage at the um Nokia theater in LA in 2011, when with we were guests of Motorhead, and I saw from standing behind Murder One, I got my little Lemmy stand up here.
All right, Lemmy.
Lemmy, man.
You can't beat
Hello.
Lemmy, man. He's the best.
We are Motorhead and we play rock and roll. And
Yeah.
and then Sherry Curry came out, and I just read her book Neon Angels, right, which had just
Mhm.
come out, and of course the movie with Kristen Stewart and Dakota Fanning had just come out, and I was teaching at the time, and one of my students who had cerebral palsy, she would have this walker. She couldn't really, sometimes she had trouble speaking, and she had a companion animal, and she was kind of, I guess, it's quadriplegic or something like that. But she was extremely, extremely, extremely smart, and she was a huge fan of the Runaways, and she had like six guitars, and she wanted to be, Joan Jett or let's Lita Ford, right? And so I was like, yeah, man, I'm a huge fan of the Runaways too. And so
Oh
it
yeah.
was it was one of our things that we connected on. And so and when I was backstage, there was something about Sherry Curry that kind of put me off. I didn't know at the time. Maybe it was an instinct, And I was remembered like the last time I saw Lemmy, like last time we spoke, we were talking about her memoir, and he signed my beer, like, because you know what I mean, like in a sort of a magical Lemmy type way,
Yeah.
and he was a real sweetie pie. He was one of the nicest people I've ever known in my life, man.
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
Huge respect for Lemmy, right? He's my heart, And so, and then later, just like in the past 3 years, when I got to know and became good friends with, Carrie Lee Chrome, and then, when I found out, to my horror and dismay, that Sherry Curry, one of this punk rock icon, is actually a fascist, right? And
Yeah.
and I was like, whoa, so what is the deal, Ken, with these punk
Yeah.
rock these punk rockers
Who's the one
turning
who
MAGA?
was allegedly raped by Kim Fowley? Is that the same person?
It is, as a matter of fact. I mean,
And
it's
she was on Jeopardy, I think, or am
that
I
that
confusing
there were
something?
no, 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 no. You're both right. I mean, so the bassist
Both
for
of you are right.
the bassist for the bassist for the Runaways, um, is named Jackie Fox, and that
Yeah.
was her stage name, and she left during the tour, the 1977 Japan tour, after an incident involving her Fender Jazzmaster bass, which was like cost something like $2,000 at the time. There was an enormous amount of money, and she left it on the stand, and she said, "Okay, make sure that it doesn't fall over because it's an extremely valuable instrument." And she was already, I believe at the time that the incident had already occurred where she was raped by Kim Fowley, and it was observed by an entire house full of people, including Sherry Curry, Joan Jett, and Lita Ford, you know, all of whom denied that it ever happened. But so the base broke, and it sort of
Yeah,
and it broke her heart, and it broke her. She couldn't go on. The,
yeah,
the, I mean, they were as popular as the Beatles. They had like the squealing, teenage girls like welcoming them because in many respects, it's kind of amazing to think about that this band, which were actually kind of the products of an exploitation Svengali guru,
right,
Kim Fowley, that they actually empowered so many, like an entire generation, like at least I'm terrible at math, but like, well, certainly Gen X and then Gen Y and then Gen Z. I mean, you have bands like the Go-Go's were made possible. All the all the metal bands, all the women-led metal bands, certainly, you have Joan Jett and Lita Ford and Sandy, um, whatever her name was, and she's dead, unfortunately, Sandy West, and then Sherry Curry, but Carrie Lee Chrome was really where it all started. And she was signed to this songwriting deal by Kim Fowley at the age of 14.
mm,
And she was kind of alienated from where her parents allowed her to be, to be sort of live with him.
mm,
And then the whole nightmare began of predation and stealing her royalties from her, you know, songs that she should be a millionaire right now instead of
mm,
living how she lives, which I won't get into. But um, so so yeah, so she was raped repeatedly by Kim Fowley. In fact, when I met him, this is another interesting and bizarre fact, but I was on a kind of a blind date with the sister of Mike Watt, right?
mm,
um, and of the Minutemen and Iggy Pop, band, and at the Gothic Ball at the Cleopatra Records, right? We were outside the Troubadour nightclub in West Hollywood, and we had people like Alexander from MK Ultra magazine, ironic name,
oh yeah,
and
great magazine.
it is a
Yeah,
great magazine. I mean, I wrote for it for several issues, and I forget who I interviewed. But so then I was introduced to Kim Fowley by a former friend who I'm not going to name, but who was um, the PA not only for Motorhead but also for um, Kiss and for Marilyn Manson, right? And it was like this is my friend Alex S. Johnson. He's writing this book. At the time it was going to be called Shock Opera. It was about horror and music. And Kim was like, he was like this. I actually wrote about him, in my sort of cyberpunk satire called Dr.
I'm re
Flesh.
I'm remembering that Legs McNeil, I think, was supposed to write a book about Los Angeles. Did that ever happen? I always wondered how he would deal with Kim Fowley. Anyway, uh,
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I love Legs McNeil,
he's
Please
great.
Kill Me
Yeah,
is
yeah, yeah,
so seminal, right?
yeah.
And
Punk was so important.
punk
The
was so
magazine.
important. Punk.
Yeah.
Who was the one who does like who did?
Hallstrom. Hallstrom.
Yeah, I'm trying to
Her
think. I
name.
had a friend who did like punk rock news or oh yeah, Kenny. Da Silva. You know Kenny? He's
I know the name, but I don't know. Yeah,
he's in Oklahoma, Japan, um, and he works with Rick Agnew from Christian Death, who's
right.
and
Mm,
so yeah, he's a mate, you know. And anyway, so Kim was like, well, if you want to know about horror in music, let's talk about sex with children. And it's like,
right,
I was like, what? What did you just say? And I asked Alexander from MK Ultra, what did Kim Fowley just say to me? He said, "Don't worry about it." Well,
right.
now it turns out they were really, really good friends until his death. And Jackie Fox wanted all she wanted to do. She didn't want to sue him. She didn't want to do anything else. She just wanted him to admit what he'd
Okay.
done,
Uh,
you know, and he died before that, happened. In
mm,
2015, Carrie and Jackie, went public to HuffPo, and that
right.
and that started that whole very, very divisive, very, very controversial split down the middle of the music industry. People who are
Right.
like on board with Carrie and Jackie, and people who are, you know, sided with Rodney Bingenheimer and Kim Fowley. And to this date, it's very extremely contentious.
And you were saying that she had become a fascist,
I said that Sherry Curry is definitely
Mary Carey. Yeah.
Sherry is very much MAGA, you know.
Okay.
And I'm just wondering about from your perspective, what do you think?
That whole rebellion
Yeah,
question
this
again.
whole rebellion, and it sort of turned well, as you very,
Like, how do you say inchoate? Inchoate? I never knew
yeah,
how you say that. I
yeah,
know how to write it, but I
I
never knew
right.
how to say it. But I mean, I think that's what
Yeah,
it is. It's an
inchoate.
inchoate rebellion.
I
Uh,
think you very correctly identified that that punk rock hits the same sweet spot of rebellion and youth culture,
well, you
and
got Johnny Rotten
and
too.
you have Johnny
John
Rotten,
Lydon, yeah,
John Lydon, yeah.
John Lydon, kind of coming towards the Trump mania kind of thing. Uh, you know, in some ways, explicitly just to piss people off,
Yeah.
right? I mean, uh, I don't know. It's some point at some point it's not okay. I mean, I still have friends who are out on that extreme edge, but definitely at some point it's not it's not okay. Yeah. I mean,
So
it's not okay now,
right,
but I do.
right.
My rule is people who I know I stay friends with, but if I don't know you, then you know, fuck
Right.
off.
Right, fuck off. Yeah. So it makes me think because as a student, as a scholar of things like, the laissez-faire of the 60s, the
Mm.
May 68, and people like Sadie Plant, the Professor
Oh
Sadie
yeah,
Plant, right?
we had her in Mondo. Yeah, she was great.
She's
Yeah.
brilliant. I've read most of her. I actually got into her. Oh, this is a connection which I think is fascinating, and because we recently lost Nancy Kilpatrick, right?
Yeah.
May 31st, and rest in peace, Nancy. Um, one of our connections that we were in a lot of very important anthologies and magazines together, including with John Shirley,
Mhm.
including Wet Bones, right? But Wet Bones magazine, which was basically just, John Shirley, you know, opening up his word hoard, unleashing his word
Yeah.
hoard, right? And Bones of the Children. I actually have copies of those. Um, Here with me. Um, this was something that my friend Paula Garan did, which is I think she won the Bram Stoker Award a number of years ago. And this is something that I was in on the ground floor of. Yeah, so this was called Bones of the Children, originally
Mm,
Bones, right?
mm,
And it has original fiction by people like Shirley, Yvonne Navarro, Steve Rasnick, Tim, Del James, um, who I met at the World Horror Convention in '95. He was a really brilliant guy. He wrote the story that became November Rain, right, for Guns N' Roses, right?
mm.
And then there was an excerpt from Poppy's book Exquisite Corpse, which has just come out, and then we had a column by Philip Nut, the late great Philip Nutman, right? And wow, I mean, just look at that. Just like you know, and I did a column called Rattling Good Reads, where I
Mm.
reviewed people like Caitlin R. Kiernan, and and that kind of started our friendship there, from the beginning. Anyway, so Nancy and I collaborated uh, with Pat Cadigan
Mm.
on the Jason X series,
Mm.
of novelizations, and that is a huge deal for fandom. And my book Death Moon was extremely controversial
Mm.
because I used Burroughsian cut-up techniques in the book. And at the time, people were really down on it. And
Really?
they were down on
What?
Pat's book too.
They were down on using the Barosian cut up
Well, the hard,
within the certain circles, I guess.
yeah.
I mean, in rock and roll, it's kind of widely accepted, by people like Bowie. Even Mick Jagger used Barosian cut up.
Oh yeah. And it's a huge fan of, the Rolling Stones and Bowie and all those people. Well, I felt I kind of had one shot at this massive, massive franchise, this New Line Cinema,
Mm.
right? And I had the opportunity to write a novel that was going to be published and appear around the world simultaneously in like 30 countries, and this and would be in airports, and I mean, my God, the and it was distributed by Simon and Schuster, right? And so I wrote this
Mass
book.
mass distribution is overrated, Phil.
It really is. Well,
Stuff gets pulped.
stuff gets pulped.
Anyway, there's another time for another story. But,
Yeah. And then when it came out, people were saying, "Oh, this guy must be on coke. He must be on drugs. It's like it makes no sense. It's non-linear. It's
oh
incoherent."
yeah.
I had to, he was using words. One of the biggest criticism was that I used words that they didn't understand, and I
Mm.
was sort of like, well, and then I came up with concepts. One of the concepts actually was fascinating. I didn't realize this. This was actually came from you.
Mm.
It was from so I read it for as a souvenir book for the World Horror Convention in I believe it was Atlanta, Georgia, in 1995, where I interviewed Poppy for Death Realm magazine. And I think Harlan Ellison was there, and Ramsey Campbell was there, and Krista Faust was there, and John Skip was there, and just, it was just, and Caitlin R. Kiernan came in and somewhat inebriated, and they read this short story called Bela's Plot, right? And so and Thomas Roche was there, and I was
Mm.
rooming with him and Kevin Andrew Murphy. So what was my point here? That at the time, oh
You
yeah, oh yeah,
said
yeah.
something that you were going to attribute to me, which
Yeah, yes, yes. So there was
uh,
a there was there
I'm
was a
ready to
su-
challenge
there
it.
was a as a souvenir book. I don't think you'll have to challenge this. There was a souvenir book which contained an excerpt from an early draft of Exquisite Corpse,
Mm.
and which used the concept of reality hacking
Oh yeah, sure,
and
yeah.
computer brain neural, what sort of what became Neuralink. And in 2005, I asked Poppy Bright, for permission to use reality hacking, the concept. And she said, "Well, I don't think I'll be using that anymore. So go ahead, please."
Mm.
That's what she always sounded to me like William Burroughs. Have that very dry, almost like the and which goes together with his incredibly um, sort of dry, you know, bone dry sense of humor. Is so
Yeah.
dark. I love
But
that
at
about him.
the same time, was an element of his politeness as well.
It's true.
That deepness that, coming from this deep place,
Yeah,
both in terms of the humor and in terms of fundamental kindness towards whoever happens to be around.
he's an
Uh,
extremely kind man.
yeah.
Yes, and very,
Reality hackers came
yeah.
to us from a guy named Alan Lundell
Oh,
when
Ellen
a bunch of
Lundell.
hackers were hanging out. We were High Frontiers magazine at the
Right.
time,
High Frontiers.
and I said, "We're not hackers," uh, meaning the writers at High
Yeah.
Frontiers, and he said, "You're reality hackers,"
Reality hackers.
and then we decided to make that our magazine.
Oh, now I know that that's the origin story. And so I thought, wow, what a
1988.
1980. So I thought that was an incredible concept. And so I used it, you know, in 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 Jason X Death Moon. And I did a whole lot of research in sort of futuristic technology, because the movie itself and even um, Pat Cadigan's novelization really didn't go far enough. I
What's
understand
the name
why.
of her book, the novel?
She wrote two, Jason X and then Jason X the Experiment, which
Okay,
are very, I mean, I think she's brilliant.
yeah,
She's one of my favorite writers I mean, next to, of that genre, like next to, Shirley and Bruce Sterling and
yeah.
obviously Gibson. Um, but and I actually took a lot of her jokes that she created some sort of, like, one of her jokes was that how we acquired the hyperdrive engine, which is one of those things in science fiction where um, in order to write a book that allows us to utilize next level technology that we don't have access to because of relativity, right?
Right.
So the hyperdrive engine, the
Yeah, you have
problem
to invent something. The
exactly,
hyperdrive is a good one. I
the
think Musk wants to
hyperdrive,
make one, actually.
right? And
Yeah.
so her very whimsical um like invention of how we got the hyperdrive engine that allowed us to travel to an alternate dimension of Earth 2, and found in this sort of giant space arc, and found an entirely new Earth because we ruined our Earth, Earth Prime, as they call it.
Right.
These are old science fiction tropes.
Yeah.
Her explanation was that we traded with this group of extraterrestrials who demanded, like in return, requested, not demanded, because they were very nice aliens, six human corpses and a metric shit ton of dwarf cannabis bud.
Yeah.
And I was like,
That's pretty cute.
you
That's
high when you
funny.
wrote that shit, right?
Yeah.
And so I used a lot
Was
of
there was a movie
her
where
jokes.
somebody sold his soul for a 12 pack of beer? I can't remember which one that was.
Yeah.
Anyway,
And so I wrote this thing. Like, it has to be like we were given clear instructions. I was given clear instructions about what it was going to be about. It's about like there's this finishing school for girls, literally, on Earth 2's moon. It's called Moon Camp Americana. I didn't have any control over that terrible naming or the terrible concept of having a finishing school for girls. So, and then Jason is also at this facility on the Earth 2's moon where he's being experimented upon by government scientists, and they're trying to, turn him into some sort of, killer for the government. Of course, that's an old trope too. And so of course he gets loose and he, whatever starts goes on a killing spree. But I took it to the next level where I thought, what if Jason is simply being controlled by what if he was actually a victim too? What if he is just being used by these people as a sort of a puppet? And so I had him sort of robo-controlled by this crazy scientist who's also a necrophile who's poaching these girls from Moon Camp Americana and turning them into zombies and killing them, turning them into zombies and then fucking them, which I thought, as a huge fan of Burroughs and Poppy Bright and, whatever, our genre, basically. I don't know whether it's your genre, but it's certainly
Seems to have legs to me.
Sirius has legs. And it was so popular. First of all, it passed muster with New Line Cinema. Second, all of the copies at Nottinghamshire, where it was actually where it was being published, all the people who sort of inputted the text as it came in, they loved it. And my editor, Jason J. Slater, who used to run Diabolique magazine for Flesh and Blood Press, he and he's now a publisher, major publisher in England. He kept encouraging me to go more batshit crazy,
Hmm.
and so I did. And and then and then the book came out, and it got like people would hated it so much they would say 1 star review. I would give this 0 stars if I could. The worst novel ever published, right? And then so for 20 years,
Congratulations.
right?
I'll have to try to read that. That sounds like
Thank
fun.
you. So it's actually online. It's archived online, so you can just look it up.
Okay.
It's a free text, and it's also like you can hear it. You can hear it. There's a 10-hour audiobook version which some crazed fans did of it. There's also a Wikipedia page and a fan page of it,
Well,
even
send
of
me
this.
some links.
Okay, will of the people who absolutely hate this book, but they're so
Yeah.
obsessed with hating it, right? And so I went to town, and boy, with the hate and the but over the years, I've had people who are just like it's become a cult book. I mean, there are people who are obsessed with it. Even the people who hate it are obsessed with, why would they spend years trying to read it? If it was so bad, there has to be something there.
Yeah, to have that much to put out something that's that powerful is, a tremendous compliment to the work that you did. Uh, yeah.
And so I just wanted to
I mean,
mention that.
I would like the Smarter Kings of Deliria to upset some people.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, I really, I mean, it's like those songs like Live Free or Dye Your Hair
yeah,
Blue are such like earworms. I mean, I listen to them pretty regularly.
yeah.
I've got them on repeat. And
Mhm.
so I really like that album a lot. And I wanted to ask you about how you sort of because you sing and you play the instruments, you kind of
I
ha,
don't.
ha,
I mean,
oh,
I sing some
okay.
of the songs. Um,
So how
but
so how does that
Pizza T is the musician.
hmm
So, but there's a lot of back and forth involved in the production
Yeah.
process. So I'm like co-producer. I've only ever written one song for Party Dogs, two chords, romping through the jungle. Uh, but I get my hands dirty on every production in terms of intervening and so forth, with a few exceptions.
Yeah, and one of the things like I've been writing songs since I was a kid, and one of my dreams of my life would I one day I would like these songs to be produced by somebody, you know. I've got some really
Right.
good songs, but and you know, one of the best compliments that anybody ever paid me was, you know, Carrie Crome said that I think like a musician, you know, and
Mm.
we were gonna do like this punk rock, you know, zine called Blammo, and we collaborated on a bunch of songs
Yeah.
that didn't get produced. But you know, the fact
Good
that
title. I think there is something called Blammo, isn't
there
there?
is there's a Blammo, and I kept saying, "Hey, Carrie, you know, you realize there is a Blammo." She said, "I want Blammo. I want Blammo." So one of these days, but so, but I just kept thinking, holy shit, here I'm writing a song with the woman who wrote Waiting for the Night and California Paradise, you know.
Right.
Just right. I mean, this is like, you know, everybody's heard these songs. Like, you know, and it's just sort of they epitomize a certain moment of where things felt new. And you know,
Mhm.
I was like I was really a little kid, but what were you like, let's say 1977, what were you doing in 1977?
1977, I was just moving from Binghamton, New York to Niagara Falls.
Hmm.
I'm not sure why we moved there, but I went with a friend of mine
Yeah.
who was a guitar player who could play, uh, basically, he could play the Rolling Stones better than Ron Wood.
Wow.
Maybe not better than Keith Richard.
Wow.
And we learned their entire catalog. And that's where I opened up my vocal cords for the first time.
Wow.
I had done some recording before that. I'd had a song that was played on local radio in Binghamton,
Wow.
and
Cool.
it was okay, but I literally opened up my voice learning the full Rolling Stones catalog, and I knew that the voice had arrived when we played, what's that? I followed her to the station. That
Um,
one.
yeah,
Love
Love in Vain.
and
Yeah.
after doing most of the song, and the neighbor knocked on the door and said, "We thought you were playing the album really loud."
Oh my
And then we
gosh.
realized it was actually you.
How nice.
So I cut my bones in terms of vocals on
Yeah.
singing like Jagger. Uh,
Nice.
and then right around 77, that was, I mean, I was very much into punk, but my pal James, JD, he really would only play Rolling Stones, Neil Young, and Bob Dylan, which I thought represented some kind of rock and roll paradigm for sure. That was pretty cool. A little bit of Bowie, uh,
Wow.
and he was just getting into Elvis Costello, but there was some kind of raw authenticity in that. So that's where I was in '77. Very much into. I mean, I was into punk right from the start with the Dolls and the Ramones. And
Yes.
we would travel 3 hours from Binghamton to New York to see the Dolls, and then later to see the Ramones and Patti Smith, and
Wow.
happened upon television. Uh, uh, saw uh, Richard Hell uh, just to get the magazine.
Yeah.
There was a stand that had all the cool magazines in Binghamton except Punk, and
Wow.
we were like order Punk magazine, and they
Yeah.
kept on missing it. So we would actually go 3 hours just to go to the village and buy Punk magazine. And
And
those were the days where you couldn't just get things online.
and then
It was so special to get something then.
and I was just reminded of how like Val Vale actually was in Blue Cheer, right?
Oh yeah,
And
yeah.
and he put out what Seek and Destroy or something like that, or
Search and
Search and
Destroy, which
Destroy,
became
yeah.
Research. Yeah.
Research, yeah.
Very big influence on Mondo 2000.
Right,
Research.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I told you I got a phone call from his assistant Marion about so
Oh yeah.
he sent me one of the Burroughs interviews that he did. So I'm going to use that
Yeah. That's so great.
in the final version of Junk Merchants too, which you are in, and I'm I'm see it's got a lot of alternative content as well as sort of remixes. I just wanted to show you, um, I in order to satisfy the demand for, you know, for this book, I decided to put out a kind of a sneak peek, and it's called Just
Yeah,
One
cool.
Fix,
Yeah, yeah, I've been
right?
seeing that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just
That awesome video, which Beavis and Butthead enjoyed so much.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Who's that
Oh,
old guy?
yeah,
He's
yeah.
cool.
He's cool. Yeah. And I my epigram that I start the the book with, you know, after one look at this planet, any visitor from outer space would say, I want to see the manager.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's got like I'm just fascinated by how much bigger Nocturnicorn Books has become as by virtue of my just having my interests,
Mm,
purely purely having the interests that I had and being at the right place in the right time.
yeah.
And
Well, hooking
and
up to rock and roll helps for sure.
yes,
I mean, Black Sabbath, that's a crowd pleaser. Yeah.
for real though. C-
Yeah. Yeah.
could you write something about Black Sabbath, or do you have anything that I
I'm
could?
not, I never really followed Black Sabbath, so I'm
Oh,
gonna
okay.
pass on it. But I
That's
mean,
no
I have a
worries.
friend who was a manager with Ozzy Osbourne.
Oh, wow.
Maybe I can see if he would talk to me about it.
That would be
Uh,
brilliant. Yeah, it's actually
yeah,
being read by Tony Iommi as we
yeah.
speak in rough form. So, um, yeah.
Ronnie Dio enters my life when I was 15 years old and overdosed on belladonna.
Oh
Uh,
my gosh.
that's another story.
Okay.
He was from Binghamton.
Oh, I didn't
Uh,
know that. Yeah.
yeah, Ronnie Dio and the Electric Elves.
Yes, that's right.
They were considered our best band. I think they mostly hung out in Syracuse at the time,
Yeah.
but they were playing Binghamton, and me and my friends had heard about belladonna,
Holy shit.
that you could get it in a medicine called Asthmador that was used by asthma patients. So they would take a little pinch of it
Yeah.
and smoke it for asthma.
Holy shit.
So we decided to take it,
Yeah.
but I took too much of it, and I died.
Holy shit.
I ended
I
up in the
hate that.
hospital. I ended up in the hospital, and the a few days before. So I never got to see Ronnie Dio and the Electric Elves there.
Oh
A
my
friend of
gosh.
mine got to it, but he got confused. He took less belladonna,
Uh-huh.
but he got confused during the show, and he decided it was the radio, and that and that the song really sucked. So so he went and he started turning the knob, which was a girl's knee, and which it could have been worse. Obviously, he
Could
got
have been
he
worse,
got
right?
he got thrown
It could
out
have
of
been
the
done a titty twister.
right. He got thrown out of that show. Uh, but one of the things that was kind of funny was we were, 14-year-old kids
Yeah,
back then. You didn't necessarily carry a real ID around with you because it
right,
was much
right,
less paranoid time.
right.
But a friend of mine had found these things that were like you could write your name and address and phone number
Yeah,
on a thing and stick them in your wallet,
right.
and they were blank. So we
Holy shit.
decided we would have fun writing names on them. So I wrote one of them was said Frank Zappa, and the other one said Ho Chi Minh. So when the police found me and took me to the hospital, they looked at the IDs and they knew I wasn't Ho Chi Minh. So they admitted me to the hospital as Frank Zappa. Um, yeah.
That's beautiful.
So the story intersects with Ronnie Dio and
Wow.
with Frank Zappa. But anyway, I should log off in a few
Okay,
minutes. I've got some
cool.
stuff to do. But I hope you'll send me the
I
transcription
I
of
I, I
this.
absolutely will. Yeah. So
And it's been
yeah,
fun doing a
it's been
one-on-one.
great fun.
And let me know when you want to do one where more people more people will join us. But
Sure.
I think this could end up being valuable for me when it's transcribed.
Okay. Yeah,
Uh,
I'll try to figure out because I do have the transcript, which accompanies the video itself. So
yeah, and once you
it's
transcribe it, I can also sick one of the transcription AIs that I have on it. I was originally using Whisper,
oh,
which is
okay.
pretty good, and then there's another one that I think is a little better. But it's
Yeah.
extraordinary what they're coming up with.
So what you want to promote is I think this was it the
Feel
still
the
this
singularity
singularity.
material.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love that. I
yeah,
love that. I think
yeah,
it has legs. I think
yeah,
for the moment. Yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
Prometheus Rioting, which is a play on Wilson's Prometheus Rising,
Yeah,
but
and
takes it into the horror of the current
I
situation.
mean that's a beautiful thing. Because I think it's just like there's a reason we're friends. I remember when I discovered you know his books, the Prometheus, Rising books, and those
Yeah,
those books, and from
Illuminatus
the
trilogy and all
Luminous
that.
trilogy.
Yeah,
I mean, they had a tremendous effect on me. I mean, to the
yeah,
point where he was one of the biggest influences on me, and so to the point where Akashic Shotgun is basically like cosmic trigger. It's
yeah.
my own cosmic trigger. So just he opened my mind to 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 some possibilities. Given us some of his suggestions like were pretty stupid, but the premise was genius, and the whole
Hmm.
idea of like the using the kind of the album or the emblem of the meme of the falcon-headed god Horus as a kind of this almost like this alchemical drug, like Wilson was kind of a
Hmm.
drug. Also,
I
when
won
like
in the 80s.
there was this guy, he called himself um, Bob Dobbs, I think, and we were friends for a while. He was
Yeah, yeah, I
friends.
know. I know the guy who took over the boat. Well, looks like they're telling me my internet connection is unstable. Are
Okay,
you still able to-
yeah. So you're kind of breaking up. So I think I'll end the meeting now. And it's really, really always a pleasure. So I'll send you the transcript. Collective
All
paw.
right.
Okay.
Ping pong.
Take care, my friend. All right. Bye bye.
All right. All right. Take care.
You too. Bye bye.